If I told you that once upon a time 4chan decided to get together and make a game about crippled anime girls, you might have a very specific idea in your head of what that product might be. In 2007, on the 4th of January, Anon posted a page from a doujin by Rata, showcasing character art for a game he called Katawa Shoujo, which, yes, does actually translate that way. For some reason, the idea of actually realising Rata's game caught on like wildfire, and based on nothing but a single image and a few ideas spitballed by Anon, one group in particular became very serious about the project. Fast forward through the creation of 4 Leaf Studios, and 4 years later, or now, exactly 10 years ago, Katawa Shoujo was released for free to the general public. The game came out in the pre-Doki Doki Literature Club era, where visual novels were not as mainstream as they are today. They did definitely exist, Ace Attorney and Danganronpa are testimonies to that, but they were made for their specific audience and otherwise mostly forgotten about. And I think that's about time this changes, because this game is bloody fantastic. My god, I can genuinely say that this game is one of my favourite things ever. Like, ever. It's funny, it's witty, it's inspiring, it's heartbreaking, it's heartwarming, it is... Words cannot describe it. But now I'm about to spend 6 pages of this script doing exactly that. But first we need to... Wait! No! Don't turn me into an animated rant avatar! No! Actually, this is fine. This visual novel tells the story of Hasao, a young man diagnosed with arrhythmia, who is transferred to Yamako High School, a school specifically designed to cater to those with disabilities. The story centres on him dealing with his situation, learning how to move forward in his newly limitating life, and developing new relationships, in particular with 5 other girls who suffer from varying disabilities. For the most part, this is it. It is a slice of life as you, playing as Hasao, go about the usual day-to-day business of attending this unique school. There's a festival going on, you can join a club, develop hobbies. It really does a good job at encapsulating mundane school life. Or a romanticised version of it. This game is very much made in the spirit of Tumblr coffee shop AUs. In fact, conflict is so sparsely used in the narrative that it means when it finally does come into play in later acts, it feels real, because everything that happens with such sincerity and genuine emotional investment. This game has you wrapped around its little finger. The focus is on the low-key, the small, daily interactions we all have but so rarely acknowledge. It's a character-driven story, so it doesn't need to be anything more than that. Focus on the tiny. In a world where the media is so oversaturated with being dark and brooding, Katawa Shoujo stands as the antidote to that, radiating this innocent quaintness about it. It's about building relationships, not the drama involved in tearing them down. I cried multiple times playing this game, and you know the best part? Most of those were happy tears. Most. This is where the game's best defining quality comes from. It has heart. A genuine warmth that comes from the game's low-key but impactful story. As Hasao overcomes his biases, his hang-ups about his new life and learns to move forward, you do too. And it fills you with a feeling of accomplishment and productivity, and it's all achieved by your interactions with these beautiful, complicated women. The writing in this game is so charming, but real. It's no surprise that I also coincidentally see a lot of my own struggles represented through the characters and their journeys. Whether that's my constant need to do better or accepting others as my responsibilities, relating to them created a bond between me and them, the exact same way that I developed one with a real-life friend who had been through similar difficulties as me. It makes the relationships and attachments feel organic and real. I look back on it and it doesn't feel like I've played a game, it feels like a life I've lived. Like people I've known. Somehow, 4Leaf Studios managed to make it feel as though it was a real-life experience, not just a game. But let's talk about the actual gameplay. There isn't any. That is because, for the most part, it is a visual novel. The most interactions you'll be doing is pressing dialogue boxes. It's a niche market. You won't be seeing Angry Joe review this one, but it's just as valid as any other genre, and I shan't hear a word said about it. The game itself is composed of a prologue and a 4-act structure. The integration of the routes following are extremely well done and subtle. It's not a character select screen. You play through Act 1 and depending on which choices the player makes and what biases they have towards which characters, this will be what decides the routes you play for the remaining 3 acts. Though technically part of the dating sim genre, I think calling it that undersells it and actively does it a disservice. Yes, there's romance in the game, but it's really used as a storytelling vessel to have you meet and come to know each of these girls. And likewise, the game has hentai scenes, but this is not a hentai game. Your relationships with the girls happen slowly, gradually, and in a realistic way, and the graphic scenes reflect that. The romance, and everything that comes with it, is tasteful and all around very respectfully handled. We bully how integral hentai is to anime culture and how it's so needlessly inserted where it doesn't belong, no pun intended, but this isn't that. It serves the narrative. Apart from that one scene. My first time playing the game, I completed each character's story route in about 6 to 8 hours. Second time playing it, I was able to maybe shave off an hour here or there, but then I learned that there was also good and bad endings for each route as well. That's 5 routes in total, each varying in lengths around those times. This is a full-on game. It's not like MetaWare High or Doki Doki, which can largely be done in one sitting. This is going to take you about 30 hours minimum to play the game through to completion. I know there's this argument if visual novels count as games or not, or if they genuinely just are interactive books. In this circumstance, I have to say the latter is a more accurate description, but I'm still going to call it a game for simplicity's sake. But yeah, this is about the same length as Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, for perspective. To talk any more about the game would mean talking about the characters, which I am delighted to do, even though I'm gonna butcher a bunch of their names. Oh, and it goes without saying, because I want you to play this game for yourself, this review will be very spoiler light. The bare minimum, but I wholly believe that you should go into this game not knowing anything at all. Let's begin. Hasao is who you play as. He's a male student that at the beginning of the game is diagnosed with chronic arrhythmia. In the prologue, we actually see him pre-diagnosis as he collapses from a major heart attack, and follow his thought process as he wrestles with the stigma of now having to be disabled. He is transferred to Yamako against his will and initially has trouble fitting in, and, well, bluntly, can't get himself to look through other people's disabilities. This game is really good at that, treating disabilities respectfully, but also realistically. For someone like me, with an invisible disability and doesn't outwardly advertise myself as disabled, I hardcore related to this, and I can only imagine how validating his struggles must feel to those worse off than me. Through Hasao's new friendships, relations, and interactions, he slowly begins to reconsider his preconceptions about disabilities, slowly coming to see others for more than just their disabilities, and himself included. You get after a while that the title is kind of a subversion of that thought process. Emmy is the route most people get on their first time. She was mine and, as a result, holds a special place in my heart. I love Emmy. I'm not going to be biased about which one my favourite is, because it's Emmy. Despite Emmy's disability, that being that she has no legs, she's actually the school's most successful track runner and is the most fitness freak of the cast. She meets Hasao by literally running into him in the hallway and nearly triggering his heart condition, after which she promises to help him with his health by forcing him to be her running partner. I like cheerful characters, and this energetic, extroverted, lemon-flavoured little girl is just a delight to be around in every scene that she's in. She and the interaction she has with Hasao are adorable, and I love the positive mindset she always radiates. It's infectious. It'll make you want to jump up and start being productive. Because if you don't, Emmy will be sad. And you don't want to make Emmy sad. Look at this face. Look at... Her route does a brilliant job at making you genuinely invested in her and her well-being, and so when plot happens and strain is put on your relationship with her, you feel it. You know those characters that when they do something just so unbearably, disgustingly, heart-wrenchingly cute that you just have to kind of step away from your screen for a second and go, yeah, well, meet the Emmy pout. Hanako's route is a lot of people's favourite, and I can see why. I don't agree, it's not my personal favourite, but I can see why. She's a quite tragic character. As a child, she got caught in a fire which burned and disfigured the entire right side of her body. But that isn't actually her disability. Some scars are more than surface level, and Hanako developed an extreme social anxiety in response to years of teasing and bullying by her peers due to her scars. As a result, she's extremely reclusive and only really feels comfortable in the presence of very few specific people. She's a trembling chihuahua of a person, and you will be walking on eggshells around her at all times. Being so shy, her story is more just about trying to be her friend, way more than it is before being about her lover. Because of this, her story is a lot more of a slow burn than the others. But all of this makes it all the more deserving when you finally begin to chip away at her walls and she slowly begins to open up and trust you. When you make this girl smile, it feels like a real life accomplishment, and by God, is it worth it. Genuinely, one of the best portrayals of day-to-day life dealing with PTSD and depression I've ever seen. One thing I do love about her route is that it's not about Hasao coming in and solving all of her problems for her. He does help, he does support, but I just feel it would have been very easy for the writers to have just gone, oh, she just needed someone to love her and now her depression is gone. And this is anything but that. It is a realistic, brutal portrayal of supporting someone with PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Coming from someone who's a reasonably outgoing and open guy, the one specific scene that really messed me up in this game is when you witness her having an anxiety attack. This isn't your Hollywood romanticized depression. This was disturbing to be around. On the flip side of Hanako, we have Lily! Lily! We love Lily! Lily is mummy. She's tall, has blonde hair, is mixed race, and has massive respect for tea. What more can you want? Emmy may be my favourite in the game, but I think Lily has the best route here. Each of the route's tones are representative of the personalities of the girls they're about, and yeah, you feel that here. Lily has been blind since birth, and I guess as a result, this has given her a very resigned, gentle, and ladylike demeanour. She takes things at her own relaxed pace, being quite a comforting and motherly figure to Hasao as he adjusts to his new school life and life as a cripple. She's also Hanako's closest friend, for reasons I probably don't have to explain. The writing here is immaculate and heartfelt. Hasao's budding relationship with Lily feels so cozy and warm. This is the most relaxing route you can play. It taps into deeper, under-the-surface emotions that you don't normally pick up on. It makes you see and understand things you didn't before. It is gorgeous writing. You ever have those people in your life that are just so impossibly perfect that you kind of just have to sit back sometimes and stare at them in awe? Yeah, that's Lily. Lily is mummy. We like Lily. Emmy's route made me feel anxious and jealous. Lily's route had me full on sobbing at my computer screen at 3 AM. And those aren't sad tears. She also has the most Hollywood ending. That's all I'll say on the matter. Rin Tezuka is next, and she's nice. Lily is mummy bait and Rin is alt bait. Typically, I don't like the more spaced out, intentionally weird characters, but Rin is the exception to that. Rin is a girl whose arms are non-existent, leaving her to use her feet to accomplish all of her daily tasks with disturbing levels of accuracy. It's this disturbingness that leaves her on the outside of society, but unlike Hanako, she fully embraces it. She's nonchalant about hers and others' disabilities in general. She's probably the character least bothered by hers. Ironic, considering she's the one most affected by it. She's Emmy's best friend, as between them they have exactly the right number of limbs to do day-to-day stuff. But more than that, they both sport one very specific, powerful belief: to not let their disabilities be what defines them. Calling her weird is underselling her a little here. There's definitely some kind of mild autism going on that causes her to act the way she does. It leaves her with this kind of pleasant but vaguely aloof Luna Lovegood quality about her. She's harmless and a little strange, but you know there's something going on deeper there. The emotional investment and strange fascination both you and Hasao develop for her feels real and genuine. If there's any one of them that deserves a hug, it's Rin, hands down. And man, I will say how much this game makes me appreciate the fact that I have arms. This girl's day-to-day life is rough. The women listening know what I mean. If you want someone who's not afraid to be different, Rin is your girl, even if she is shaped like a creeper. Shizune is the student council president of Hasao's class. She's both deaf and mute, communicating primarily through Japanese Sign Language, and her fruity friend Misha, who's always by her side and translating everything, allowing her to communicate with other people. Shizune is manipulative, robotic, competitive, cunning, and I love every second of it. She rules that student council with an iron fist. Her personality is gaslight, girl boss, gatekeep. This is the mindset of Emperor Palpatine, Grand Admiral Thrawn, and Elon Musk all squeezed into the body of one 4-foot-tall Japanese girl. She hates Lily, even though they have utterly no way to communicate. She hates Hanako for just liking Lily. Remember that disturbing panic attack I mentioned her having? Yeah, Shizune caused that. This girl is a calculating, scheming monster, and she is so adorable when doing it. We like Shizune. We shouldn't, because she's toxic, but we do. So, bearing that in mind, it's rather disappointing for me to say I'm not actually over keen on her route. It's probably my least favourite out of the 5, actually. Good, just not as good as the rest. I think mine, and I'll be honest, most people's criticism with it is the focus in her story is far less on the developing relationship between Hisao and Shizune, and far more on the three-way relationship between Hisao, Shizune, and Misha. And I don't mean in like the fun, polyamorous way, I mean you feel like a third wheel. And if you don't feel like a third wheel, Misha does. It's awkward, but again, in a realistic kind of sense. If someone is extremely dependent on a person, then deciding to date someone is going to change that dynamic significantly. This is a good portrayal of that, as brutally awkward and uncomfortable as that situation is in real life. I think in that regard, they did a little too good of a job. It's well written and engaging. For me, there's just not enough of the stuff I've come to love in the other routes, and sue me, the ambiguous ending soured me a bit. There's probably tons of people out there that love Shizune's route. They're wrong, and I won't hear a word of it, but they're probably out there. I wonder if her beta route was any better. Those are the main characters with roots and stories of their own, but there are actually a lot more characters still involved in the story. On Shizune, we also have Misha, her best friend and fellow member in the student council, who attends Yamako as part of the Psi language recruitment program, making her one of the few non-disabled students attending the school. Despite being a relatively major character, she's not actually got a route of her own, functioning more as a tutorial route for the opening act, and actually being the first one to befriend Hisao and Yamako. While friendly and cheerful, her constant positivity and enthusiastic energy can be a bit tone-deaf. She's the ditzy one. Did Shizune sound too awful to be likeable? Yeah, well, consider that everything she says has to be filtered through Misha for people to understand it, and you realise why they're always around each other. Kenji is Hisao's neighbour in the dorms, who is and the only other male character our age in the game. He's a woman-hating, conspiracy theorist-loving incel who was definitely made to be representative of the game's origins on 4chan. He exists solely for comic relief and for the story to bully him. We like Kenji. Yeah, we like Kenji. And yes, there's a secret Kenji route. There are others, such as the nurse in charge of overkeeping the well-being of the students, Muto, the supportive teacher of Hisao's class, and Yuko, the ditzy librarian, but those are just the main romanceable ones. I'm just going to mention this now, as I probably won't have opportunity to fit it in elsewhere, but there were originally actually 6 routes, and one never made it into the game. This is of Miki, who's a one-handed tomboy runner from Emi's track team. Though you can't play through her route in any release of the game, the entire transcript for her route, a unique music track, and even custom art is available online and can be found pretty easily. She still did actually make it into the game in Hanako's route, albeit only as a side character who only appears a few times, but still it's nice to see her. When it comes to the girls' dynamics, they can be split into 3 groups. Shizune and Misha, they run the student council, so that only makes sense. The two are pretty much as inseparable as you can get, which, as you can imagine, does become an issue if you decide to romance Shizune. Lily and Hanako, who fit together like peas in a pod from how sheer different they are. Where Hanako is shy and introverted, Lily is refined, confident, and extroverted. They form a symbiotic relationship, with the more forthcoming Lily filling in the motherly role for Hanako. Although, as this plot develops, you may find out that Hanako isn't as happy with this dynamic as she lets on. The last and definitely most aloof of the pairings is Rin and Emi. Where it isn't uncommon to see the other girls cropping up in each other's stories, it's quite rare to encounter these two in any other routes than their own or each other's routes. They're dormitory neighbours that share one solid belief: they're just girls doing what they can't because they can. You gotta love it. And that's our roster, and the story of each of these women is handled with respect and grace. The idea of becoming disabled seems like this tragic, awful thing, but we really don't get media that focuses on what happens after the accident. Or media that does it well. The daily problems that these girls suffer from are very rarely the direct result of their disabilities, but are more of the personal, relatable variety. Disabled people suffer a lot, yes, but their day-to-day basic life doesn't revolve around a constant brooding struggle. They have the same hobbies, favourite places to go, opinions, and attitudes that, well, normal people have. I always said the absolute worst way to write diversity is by putting too finer a point on it and thereby defeating the purpose of it. Ghostbusters 2016 made a point of advertising it as the female Ghostbusters. Therefore, we're going in to watch it expecting a female Ghostbusters movie and not just a Ghostbusters movie. As I said in my Lovecraft video, the Alien franchise is extremely feminist with its portrayal of Ripley, but because it doesn't advertise itself as this, normalizes it, that aspect goes over many people's heads. With Katawa Shoujo, it subverts this trend. It advertises itself as diverse, literally in the name, but then does a complete 180 with the gameplay. It starts Yu and Hisao off labeling the girls as their disabilities, but by the end of it, Emi is not the girl with no legs. She's Emi Abarazaki. She's the fastest girl on the track team. She loves strawberries. Blue is her favourite colour. She can't sing a song to save her life. She's a year older than everyone in her class, and despite being the most popular girl, she only has a few close friends. Oh, and she also has no legs. She is a fully fleshed out, rounded person, not a stereotype, and she is more than her disability. In an age where we scream so much about wanting representation and diversity, this game did it 10 years earlier and it went under everyone's nose. This is what we want from diversity in media. But here's the clincher. Here's the thing that this game does, which I don't think I've seen in any other akin media. It's not afraid to flip that message on its head again. True, the girls are not defined by their disabilities, but this doesn't mean their disabilities haven't had a trickle effect on their personalities. Take Shizune. Her communication is rudimentary at best. She's among the most intelligent of all the characters, but she's unable to express herself as openly and freely as everyone else. How does this manifest? Well, it makes her blunt and straight to the point, because everything she says has to be carefully thought about. She has gotten good at being quick and straight to the point with it. This efficiency and thoroughness with how she thinks and communicates, that's a large chunk of why she comes across as cold and calculating as she is. A butterfly effect of being deaf. And the game is not afraid of acknowledging this. If someone who is in a wheelchair has to rely on someone to move them around, problems with emotional attachment may come easier to them than others. It's only logical. It's an insightful, realistic take that I believe, honestly, is the best representation of living with a disability there is. If I was to do a ranking of which routes I'd consider the best, that would be a very difficult argument to make. Because I love them all, even the ones I didn't like as much as the rest. I still enjoyed it. With such a diverse range of characters, both physically and mentally, it means there's someone here for everyone. Or should I say, a story here for everyone. What this game puts you through is extremely enriching and validating. You don't play it, you experience it. There's a very specific atmosphere that this game sets up, one that's present through all of the routes, and it's the feeling of nostalgia, present even your first time playing. Something that helps it achieve this objective, I believe, is the role the music has in the game. The game features a fully original soundtrack, the Katawa Shoujo Enigmatic. The Katawa Shoujo Enigmatic Box of Sound, written by Nikolai Armarfi and Blue123, and it is god tier. Toby Fox gets all the hype for being the face of indie game music, but this game did it 3 years earlier and deserves just as much attention. Every track is so tailor-made and suitable for the situation it's used in. You'll find yourself fantasizing over drinking tea as you watch the sunset, enjoying a slice of cake in a busy cafe, or going out for a run. AKA the stuff we are all perfectly capable of doing anytime we want. No word of a lie, I opened this game again for the first time in months for some footage for this video, and the second the opening chords of Winsona began to play, I physically felt myself begin to tear up. Because everything that happens in this game strikes as so down-to-earth, realistic, genuine. I'm using these words over and over because they are the best descriptive terms for this stuff. The hours you spend listening to this music leaves a permanent mark, and upon re-listening to it, it can create the exact emotions experienced when listening to it for the first time. It's nostalgic, and that nostalgia is comfort. And the range, God, it can be heartwarming, gut-wrenching, wholesome, anxiety-inducing, quirky. It is absolutely fantastic, and it's the music you've been listening to this entire video. My personal recommendations are Afternoon, which is my favourite track in the game, and I feel it perfectly encapsulates the feeling when you realise you're having fun. Whether you're on call with friends, out on a day out exploring with a loved one, whatever, that very stoic, solemn moment where you get an extra level of awareness when you look around and go, yeah, maybe it's not all bad. Or, if you're going for the more dramatic tracks, both Shadow of Truth and Cold Iron do very good jobs at making me feel worried. You know when something is wrong in life? I don't mean casually wrong, I mean something is wrong. The kind of sudden, abrupt wrongness that makes your stomach drop through the floor and you can see white. Yeah, these do that. Awful, but great. It's a soundtrack on par with the immaculate writing. In fact, I think there's only one part of Katawa Shoujo that doesn't hold up as well, and this is going to stir the comments up. It's the character art. The art is by no means bad, but you could definitely point some criticism towards it. It's not poorly made art, all of the main characters look absolutely gorgeous, but it's when you start to spec out into some of the side characters that things look a bit odd. Multiple different artists worked on the game, and you can tell. The characters' designs differ and at times don't even look like they belong in the same game. I remember thinking that was quite distracting my first playthrough, specifically when seeing Misha and Muto in the same room. But 10 minutes later it completely passed over me, and now I'm used to seeing the characters so often it doesn't bother me at all. Ooh, on the art, the acts are broken up by these quite cute animations that are sparsely dotted around. It's the only time in the game you actually get to see the characters animated and moving, and although it can look a bit dated by modern standards, it screams wholesomeness and fills me with a vague what-if hope of us one day getting an anime. A boy can dream, right? Emmy body pillows when? Oh wait, what? On a more solemn note, I also can't really talk about the game's art style without also mentioning Raid, who was a very active member of 4 Leaf Studios, being both a director and an artist who worked on the game. They unfortunately passed away in 2020, so we're unable to see the novel over to its 10-year anniversary, but the part of them that they gave to Katawa Shoujo will live on forever. Perfect moments cannot be preserved, except only in memory. And so thank you, Raid, for sharing with us those wonderful, wonderful memories. To quote a tweet from Yui Reviews on Twitter, there are few experiences I've had with media that deeply impacted me. Some of it helped me come to terms with grief or change. Some of it helped me grow as a person. Some of it made me more understanding, open-minded and happy. The list goes on. Katawa Shoujo did all of that, and more. And that sums it up. I can wholeheartedly say that this is one of, if not the visual novel game that I hold most close to my heart. And the only reason it doesn't get more hype is people just plain don't know about it. And that's it. The problem with this game, arguably its biggest single flaw, is it came out way too ahead of its time. It came out in an age where visual novel games and anime weren't cool. You didn't discuss them in public. In the same way that comic books used to be shunned but are now loved by all. If this game had come out now, it would be hailed as a saving grace for the disabled community, and it genuinely would be a contender for one of the greatest visual novels of all time. The only, and I repeat, only reason why it isn't chalked in with the likes of Steingate, Danganronpa and Doki Doki is because barely any knows about it. What this game would really benefit from is maybe not a sequel, but some kind of big re-release to drag it back into the public consciousness. Something along the lines of Katawa Shoujo Healed or Katawa Shoujo Recovery Edition. I don't know. Make it a full HD remaster. Get some merch released for it. Get some big YouTuber to play it. And heck, maybe get some of the team back together for some DLC. Yeah? Akira Root when, please? So, spread the word, I guess. If you've played the game and you enjoyed it, tell your friends about it. Or, if you're watching this and you like the sound of it, play it for yourself. Stream it, stick it on YouTube, do fan art, cosplay it, give this the free advertising that it deserves. Heck, Avatar Last Airbender didn't get the praise that it deserved until nearly 15 years after it came out. Let's make this like that. I want to see the soundtrack on vinyl. I want to see Kenji body pillows. I want to see Emi Abarazaki Nendoroids. Rin Tezuka back scratchers, anyone? Ugh. Maybe now, 10 years after its release, in a world where diversity matters and disabled voices can be heard, maybe it's time Katawa Shoujo gets the love it deserves. Thank you for watching. Check this game out, and for God's sake, don't comfort Misha!
Sa 親が寝たから